Alright, in our previous lecture we installed Presto, and we used it to connect to Hive. Let's do something a little bit more interesting and also connect Presto to Cassandra. So I'm going to assume you still have Cassandra installed from our previous lectures in this course. If not, you can just watch, that's fine, but let's assume that you still have it set up. So first thing we need to do is enable Python 2.7, SCL, enable Python 2.7 bash. And that error is safe to ignore. We can say Python-V. Make sure we are in fact in Python 2.7. Cool, and now we can start the Cassandra service. Service Cassandra start. Starting Cassandra. Oh, the suspense. Okay. And we also need to enable the thrift service on Cassandra because Presto requires that to communicate with Cassandra. So to do that, we can just type in no tool enable thrift. No tool is a Cassandra utility, you might recall. Alright, so we're good. Let's see if make sure our database is still in there. There should be a users database in Cassandra from our Cassandra lectures. Let's just make sure it's still there. So let's enter SQL shell, CQLSH, -- SQL version. So what we're doing here is connecting to the command line interface of Cassandra. And we can do describe key spaces, and we should see a movie lens key space. Cool, it's still there. Let's take a peek at what's in there. Use movie lens. Describe tables. And we still have our users table. Very cool. Let's make sure there's actually stuff in it. Select star from users, limit 10. Cool, so there we have some user data that we already previously imported into our Cassandra database. We have user ID, age, gender, occupation, and zip data. So now we're going to connect that to Presto together with the ratings data from Movie Lens that's living in Hive, and we're going to combine the two to do a query that actually merges data from both Cassandra and Hive at the same time. How awesome is that? Let's quit out of Cassandra's command line interface, and before we can actually connect to Cassandra, we need to set up a configuration file for it with Presto. So we are sitting inside the Presto server directory now. Let's go inside the etc catalog subdirectory. So now we need to configure the properties for Cassandra, and that's actually pretty easy to do. Let's just type in VI, being the most basic text editor that we have here on Linux, Cassandra.properties. All right, we'll hit the I key to insert text. VI is not the most user-friendly text editor, but hey, it works. We're going to enter in here as connector.name equals Cassandra, and Cassandra contact-points equals 127.0.0.1. So that's all you need to get started with Cassandra and Presto. You just need to give a name to the connector that will refer to it within Presto and give it the host name that we're going to be connecting to where the Cassandra is actually running. So we know that we're just running on the local host 127.0.0.1. If this were a real Cassandra database that you were integrating with, you would give a list of several of the servers there for it to potentially connect to in the event that one of them were down. So we can hit escape and then :WQ to write and quit this file. Let's just make sure that it's there. Sure enough, it is. Cool. Alright, so we're still inside etc catalog. Let's cd up by 2 directories by doing that. And now we can kick off Presto again. So let's type in bin/launcher start. And that should start Presto once again. And we can then connect again into the command line interface. Oh, that's cool. You can see that the operational dashboard just started moving again automatically. God, I love that thing. All right, so let's do bin/presto --server 127.0.0.1 :8090, and this time we're going to say --catalog Hive, Cassandra, because we're going to connect to both Hive and Cassandra at the same time. Now remember, this command line interface is just one way of connecting to Presto. You know, the more common scenario would be you'd actually be connecting to it through through a database driver and using some sort of a client application that talks SQL to actually connect to Presto and the suite of databases that it covers. So let's see if it worked. Let's say show tables from Cassandra.movieLens, and we should see our users table if it's all working. Cool. All right, so we've actually successfully connected Presto to Cassandra, and we can see that it can see our users table. Let's describe what that is, shall we? Cassandra.movieLens.users. And we can see that that table contains user IDs, ages, genders, occupations, and zips. So everything seems to have come through, and the types look correct. Very cool stuff. Let's play. So at the same time, we can query Hive as well, and Cassandra. So let's select some stuff from the Cassandra database to start. Select star from Cassandra.movieLens.users, limit 10. And there's the first 10 results from our users table in Cassandra, and within the same session I can say select star from hive.default.ratings, limit 10. And there's the first 10 ratings from Hive. So you can see that we can get a little peek of what's inside both of these tables from within Presto. Let's tie them together and do something really cool. So let's say select u.occupation, u being an alias that I'm going to give to the users table that lives in Cassandra. Count star from hive.default.ratings with an alias of r, and we will join that with Cassandra.movieLens.users and give that an alias of u on the user ID field being used for the join from both of the tables from two entirely different databases, mind you. Group by u.occupation. So what we're doing here is grouping up all of the users for each unique occupation and counting up how many ratings there are for each occupation. Let's see if it works. Very cool. So yeah, check it out. 21,957 ratings from students, 901 from none, and so on and so forth. 540 doctor ratings. Very cool. It actually worked. That's kind of awesome. Q to get out of that. All right, so there you have it. That's Presto. We've configured it, just to start for talking to Hive and Cassandra. Obviously, you can connect to additional sources as well. And for details on that, you can go back to the documentation for Presto. If you just go back to the documentation, you'll see there's a whole section of different connectors and how to configure them. So for example, if you wanted to connect to MongoDB, you could just click on that chapter and you can see that just like we created a Cassandra.properties file, all you need to do is create a MongoDB.properties file as well with pointing at where you want to connect, where MongoDB is running. And you can actually talk to MongoDB just as easily. Ditto for MySQL or PostgreSQL or Redis or Kafka. I mean, all sorts of cool stuff here. So that is Presto in a nutshell. Let's clean up our mess here now that you've seen it running and see that it's real. We'll quit out of the command line interface and we'll stop. We're still in the Presto server directory, yes. So bin/launcher stop to stop Presto. And we will also stop Cassandra with service Cassandra stop. And now things are pretty much back to normal. So now it's safe to exit out of this session and close down the virtual machine if you want to. And that is Presto. Very cool. So there you have a few different ways of executing SQL queries on top of your cluster. We talked about Apache Drill, which lets you issue queries across an entire range of MongoDB or Hive or HBase or any random flat data you might have. And we talked about Facebook's Presto, which is a similar tool, but with a different set of technologies that it can work with, such as Cassandra. And we talked about Phoenix, which can sit on top of HBase to actually give you very fast and very efficient SQL queries on top of an HBase instance. So there you have it. Various external SQL engines that you can run on top of your data. Let's move on.